to the Galaxy Surfactants Limited Q2 FY22 earnings conference call. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company, which are based on the beliefs, opinions, and expectations of the company as on date of this call. These statements are not the guarantees of future performance and involve risks and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Nathan Shekhar, Promoter Managing Director, Galaxy Surfactants Limited. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to our earnings conference call. Before we get to business, hope all of you had a safe and healthy Diwali. On behalf of all of us at Galaxy, we wish you a very happy and prosperous year ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a challenging quarter for us. Since listing, we have never reported a decline, and therefore it is critical we understand the context within which the same has happened. As I highlighted during the previous earnings call, the demand scenario continues to remain robust. While an inflationary scenario might push back purchases, we till now have not witnessed any permanent cutback in demand. The challenge on hand is the supply-led volatility. It is important that we understand the supply chain dynamics, as this has significantly impacted our performance for this quarter. Starting with our major raw material, L'Oreal alcohol, which constitutes 50 to 55% of our raw material cost. As all of you might be aware, our L'Oreal alcohol is sourced from Southeast Asia. The onset of pandemic in Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia in the quarter 2 impacted the raw material supply situation severely. Much of the impact was felt in August and September due to increased delivery times, unclear schedules, and increased volatility in the L'Oreal alcohol prices. To give you all a perspective, the L'Oreal alcohol prices are corrected from the highs of $2,100 per metric ton in May to $1,800 per metric ton in July, August, and since then have ramped up to $3,000 per metric ton in October. The pandemic not only disrupted the feedstock value chain, but also disrupted the entire supply chain. Freight costs from Southeast Asia to India have risen nearly 500 to 700% in the last 1 year, and approximately 10 to 15% for this quarter. Increased supply-led volatility impacted our production schedules, enhanced risk, as well as also impacted our cost of operations. This is clearly visible in our quarter 2 performance. One of our major critical raw materials is ethylene oxide. The same is used for manufacturing performance surfactants as well as our preservatives. While we had shared with you during our Q1 con call about the availability issues, the same continued in Q2. Rising crude prices along with availability issues further impacted production and margins. So to give you an idea on the inflationary scenario upon us, ethylene oxide prices have risen nearly 40% in the last 1 year. That is from July 20 to July 21. The L'Oreal alcohol prices have risen in the July-September quarter by 49% since July 2020 and zoomed to 2.5 times if we compare it to the prices as on date. What I mean is that the July 20 prices of L'Oreal alcohol were $1.2. As on date, that is in November, the prices of L'Oreal alcohol is about $3,000 per metric ton. Ladies and gentlemen, most of you might be aware of the disruption that has taken place in the shipping industry. Exports make up for nearly 2/3 of our business, and raw material imports make up for nearly 70 to 75%. While freight as a component for us is a pass on and entirely recovered from our customers, the extreme volatility which has resulted in freight rates rising 100 to 700% with month-on-month increase to the tune of 10 to 40% also increased our cost of operations. It adversely impacted the margins of our long-term businesses, primarily the bid and contractual businesses. While customers are not oblivious of this, recovery of the same in this quarter was not possible. But given the strong relationships we share with our customers, we do expect that we will be able to recover some of these over the next 6 months. Unavailability of containers for long-distance shipments impacted our specialty business as well as disrupted intermediate feedstock supply chain at our Egypt plant. These two had a major impact on our performance this quarter. The objective of highlighting the entire supply chain dynamics, ladies and gentlemen, is to help you understand the context of the quarterly numbers. At Galaxy, we have always believed in giving our best, and we do everything possible to ensure that we meet our customers' requirements, service to the best of our abilities, and maximize value. While our volumes might have declined 7% on a year-on-year basis, supply-side factors impinged our ability to service the available demand. But in the midst of this challenging environment, I would like to highlight some of the key positives of this quarter as well as the first half. Our India volumes, though, remained flat on year-on-year basis, quarter-on-quarter, despite the feedstocks availability issue, have reported an increase of 1%. Having said that, for the past 1 year, we have now been clocking volumes of 22 to 24,000 metric ton for our domestic business, clearly validating the structural uptick. Till 1920, our volumes were in the band of 19 to 21,000 metric tons. Our proteins, preservatives, and surfactant businesses, after a slow 2020-21, have started gaining traction. We remain confident that going ahead, the specialty volumes, barring the supply-driven constraints, should see a healthy uptick in volumes. The Africa, Middle East, Turkey region, again, while on face of it might show a decline, is witnessing traction given the improving economic prospects of the crude exporting countries. To summarize, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of financial numbers, cumulatively the supply-led factors adversely impacted our EBITDA by 20 crores. Before we move on to outlook for the coming 6 months, I would like to share a few positives updates from you. Your company was awarded the Indian Chemical Council's Acharya P.C. Ray Award for Development of Indigenous Technology 2020 in this quarter for indigenously developing Galgard Lipogy, a patented non-toxic antimicrobial preservative technology for personal care products. This is a new molecule which is slowly gaining traction in the developed markets and should bear fruits in the coming 3 to 5 years. Incidentally, we also backed the Golden Peacock Award for Eco-Innovation in the last, in this month, last month. The CapExes done for specialty products at Jagadia, Tarapur are now being operationalized in phases and should be fully operational by January 2022. This will lay the foundation for our next leg of growth in the coming years. Moving on to the outlook, ladies and gentlemen, for the next 6 months, we retain the EBITDA guidance of 16 to 18,000 rupees per metric ton. Despite the extreme volatility and inflationary feedstock scenario, in H1, our EBITDA per metric ton stood at 15,917, which we believe should hold. While freight rates are now showing some signs of tapering, container availability issues persist. We only see this normalizing in the coming 6 to 9 months. Managing supply chain and inflationary feedstocks in this volatile scenario will be a critical success factor, and Galaxy is geared up to manage it. As Southeast Asia gets back to normalcy, we do see the feedstocks available scenario improving. With this, I would like to state that we retain our 6 to 8% volumes guidance. Having said this, it is also important that we understand the emerging risks which can have a material bearing on our performance. One, sudden and significant downward correction in raw material prices can have an adverse impact. We do have a robust risk management system in place to manage this risk. The export support benefits realized in Egypt and recognized on receipt basis in the first half of last year, that is FY 2021, is not expected to be received in H2 FY 2022. To conclude, as it is said, we do not grow when things are easy. We grow when we face challenges. This was once a challenge, and the experience acquired from this will surely help us in maintaining and enhancing our growth momentum. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Wish you all a very safe and happy coming year. Thank you.
Shall we open with the question and answer session? Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Participants present on the audio bridge who wish to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Rohit Nagraj from Emkay Global. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and thanks for explaining the situation for quarter 2. So the first question is on the EO availability. So you mentioned that there was an increase in pricing as well as availability. How is the situation shaping up, and what was the particular reason because of which this particular EO availability was in question? Thank you.
So first of all, the reason was because of the scheduled maintenance activities in my suppliers' plants getting extended because of the COVID situation that was there, plus also some pending maintenance that they couldn't completely fulfill in the previous year because of COVID. So that was thing. Having said that, we do see that things have started normalizing over the last 45 days, and we expect things to be, as assured by our supplier, that things will pretty much be normal. Okay, our only objective is to see as to how we are able to ensure that we are able to catch up on whatever we lost in the previous 3 to 4 months.
Right, sir, got it. So the second question is, again, in the initial comment itself, you mentioned that there was no permanent cutback in demand. Given that the pricing on the raw material side has increased and probably at some or the other point in time we'll be passing it on to the customer, how do we foresee the demand side, whether it will get impacted or whether people will be able to absorb the increased prices and the demand will remain stable? What is your overall sense across the geographies and our product streams? Thank you.
So what we are saying is the price increases were being done in a judicious manner by our customers since May, June this year, okay, in a very phased manner. And, they are also cautiously optimistic that the demand should hold. And till probably now, we aren't seeing any significant issues on that front. But yes, you're right. We need to watch, okay, in terms of how the consumer demand is getting impacted with these price increases, whether the consumer demand still holds. And we think this across. Okay. Now, yes, we do see that on certain high-end, on premium products, typically which are those high-priced SKUs, there can be some down trading that can be done by the consumers. But yes, we need to probably wait and watch over the next 2 to 3 months to have a clear picture on this. But having said this, as of now, we do not see any significant impact on that front. Okay, we'll probably know in the next 2 to 3 months.
Yeah. Thank you so much and best of luck, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Participants who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Bob from Falcon. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hello. If you could clarify a bit on how the pricing mechanism works with your buyers, because you're a B2B supplier, right? So end consumer demand shouldn't be your concern. After all, you're supplying intermediates to the likes of Procter & Gamble and Unilever. If anyone should be taking a hit on their margins, it should be them who have much higher margins than you have. So how does this dynamic really work?
Please.
Yeah, so if you look at it based on, we have varied type of contracts that we do. So depending on the customers and the long-term nature of the contracts, you have pass-through contracts where the feedstock prices get passed on, okay, and your various other cost variables that would be part of the price change mechanism. But we also have certain bid contracts that we do for a period of anywhere from 3 months to 1 year on some products and with some customers. There obviously, you need to manage the risk in a way that once you tie up those contracts, you also back-to-back tie up the feedstock contracts as well. And obviously there is some portion of the business that essentially gets done on a monthly basis in terms of pricing that gets rolled out every month. So this is a combination of what we have. So as you rightly said, with customers where we have longer term contracts, we have clear price change mechanism in place to pass on feedstock cost increases.
Right. Yeah, I understand that, but the concern is, you see, L'Oreal alcohol and all our major products of companies like Wilmar, and from their perspective, they would keep it as high as possible, right? They don't care about your margins. So similarly, since you're an intermediate supplier, let's say L'Oreal alcohol goes to 5,000, right, ringgit. What would you do? How would your intermediate prices increase? Because after all, at some point the consumers will have to take the hit and the multinationals would have to take the hit.
You are right. As we said, that's how we continue to maintain our EBITDA guidance of 16 to 18,000 rupees per metric ton. Okay. What we have seen, the impact in this quarter has been entirely due to the sudden volatility in the prices as well as the freight costs, which we have not been able to fully pass on during the last quarter. We will be able to recover them as we go forward.
Right. So you're confident of recovering it?
Yeah, we will, as we go forward, we will recover it.
Okay, and your contracts with your suppliers, right, for L'Oreal alcohol, are they all on the spot market, or do you have longer term contracts?
So we have a combination there again, where we do longer term contracts, we do 3 to 6 month buying, we also do spot buying. So that's one way that we manage the risk. Okay, so there's a combination of that we do.
Yeah, well, when the L'Oreal alcohol prices started going up from last year, from 1,800, why didn't you get into longer term contracts when the trend was quite obvious?
Yeah, if I had a crystal ball in front of me last year, I could have done that. But the fact here is that when you manage your risk, we are not supposed to be also taking long-term calls based on what we expect the prices to be 1 year down the line, because the market is not going to, market has its own way of, behaving. So we are very clear that when we have to take any long-term calls, it needs to be not giving us an exposure.
And clearly, we don't speculate on raw material prices.
We have a cap.
We don't speculate on raw material prices. We don't make our profits from speculation on raw materials.
And 1 year back, you could not have foreseen the scenario of COVID impacting plantations, and then in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and also olive oil producers, and the reducing supply, both in terms of the vegetable oil as well as the oleochemical derivatives. So these are all a lot of imponderables that we could have not known 1 year back.
No, I completely agree with that. I'm in no way advocating speculation. What I was saying was picking up on your point where you said you sometimes have longer term contracts, right, for L'Oreal alcohol. So suddenly it's gone up to $3,000, but if you had a 3-month even contract, you would have used the contract pricing, right? That's what I meant.
Those are always, yes, those long-term contracts are always back-to-back.
And open positions. Yeah, you don't keep open positions.
You don't keep open positions.
Oh, understand.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Open positions, okay, then the risk is going to be very significant.
In both ways.
Yeah.
I see. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rohan Gupta from Edelweiss. Please go ahead. Rohan Gupta, Go ahead with the question.
The line is bad, I guess. You know, it's the voice is coming very muddled.
Mr. Rohan, sir, can you please go ahead with the question? Your line is unmuted.
Yeah, thank you. Sir, good afternoon. There was some line problem.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Rohan, but there is a lot of background disturbance which is coming from your line. Can you please check, and if you can come back in the queue, sir? Thank you. Participants, to ask a question, please press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Bhargav Vidade from Kotak Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, team. My first question is on, is there any loss in terms of customers, especially your international customers, given this is a much needed raw material intermediate for them? Or is there any market share loss which you are witnessing amongst your international customers?
So see, obviously the sort of relationship with customers, I can tell you very clearly there have been no loss of customers. But yes, our ability to serve, like certain customers always give us the first right of refusal. So if our inability to reach the material to them on the time that they require, so obviously they would end up going and buying it from others who can give it to them. Otherwise, in terms of our strategic intent with customers and their long-term relationship that we have with them and their extremely positive way we have serviced them and supported them despite these challenges, holds us in good stead in terms of growing the business further with them.
So once these supply chain bottlenecks, especially on the raw material front, stabilize, are you confident that this transient market share loss with your international customers would be more than offset?
Very much.
Okay. Secondly, sir, you mentioned that on the India side, despite a large base of last year due to pent-up demand, you have witnessed almost flattish volume growth. And you mentioned in your presentation there are some structural trends that you are witnessing which have resulted in these uptick in volume. Is it possible to elaborate a bit on this?
So what we are saying is that when we say such a uptick, the hygiene habits because of COVID, that changed from the first quarter of last year, continues to maintain the momentum. So people have become more conscious of hygiene. So it's ensuring that the volumes that grew last year, they maintain the sort of momentum that was there. So last year same quarter, there was a huge pent-up demand that came up, because the first quarter was obviously full of total lockdown. So now despite that not being there in this quarter, if you look at H1, the volumes have grown pretty significantly as far as India is concerned. So that tells us that there's a still uptick in demand. Okay.
And lastly, on this Jagadia and Tarapur facility, which will likely get fully commissioned by January, is it possible to share which kind of products will you be manufacturing here?
So as we already mentioned, in Tarapur as well as Jagadia, the products that we are manufacturing are mild surfactants and non-toxic preservatives, which we know are new generation preservatives. So this is enhancing our capacities, which initially we had set it up in Tarapur, which we are expanding in Jagadia. So this should hold us in good stead over a horizon of next maybe 5 years in terms of the requirements as far as the market is concerned. And so to sum up, in Jagadia as well as Tarapur, the capacities that are coming online are with respect to mild surfactants as well as non-toxic preservatives.
And would it be fair to say that some bit of this portfolio would also be fairly new as far as your customers is concerned?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, sir. Thank you and all the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Participants, to ask a question, please press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Rohan Gupta from Edelweiss. Please go ahead.
Sir, hope it's clear now.
Yeah, much better, but still could be better. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Sir, couple of questions from my side. Sir, first, please clarification on this L'Oreal alcohol prices. You mentioned in month of October, it went up to almost $3,000 per ton?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, and they are still at those levels? I mean, at 3,000?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Sir, you also mentioned that we can recover some of the losses. I think in the current quarter, you had roughly 20 crore rupees loss because of this volatility, both in freight cost and also in the RM cost. You mentioned that probably in second half, you can recover some of these losses. Did the second half be normal margin profile, or you just mentioned that it can improve only from current level, but it still will remain bad?
You know, what is important, Rohan, is that, let me explain, okay. With customers, see, if the raw material price increase was the only increase that happened, I think I know we could have been in a much better position to pass it down if I could service them on time, guarantee deliveries to them, and also have no freight cost increase. So if you see, the last 4 to 5 months have a combination of factors, everything that is loaded against in terms of both us and our customers and consumers. So it was important that as we preserve our strategic intent with customers and where they see this as continuing to be dependable, it's important that we talk a language where we say what needs to be done, how they can support us, how we can support them, and come to a way that we are able to go through the situation jointly. It is not about us and them separately. So that is how we engage with customers, because that's what makes us strategic intent actually get demonstrated. As we move forward, our ability, like for example, when the freight rates are moving up every week, like the situation was that the freight rate moving every week, and if you need to get a confirmed booking, you need to pay extra. And if you need to be giving something that needs to be booked 1 month ahead, you need to be paying much higher. So that is how the freight market was. So I can't go back to the customer every week saying that by the time I'm shipping it's gone up by so many dollars, please give it to me. We can't be transactional. So that is how the recovery keeps getting pushed, okay. And now things seems to getting stabilized. So our ability to pass on is much higher because things are not going up every week as it was in the last 3 to 4 months.
Okay. So, sir, in that way, if I extrapolate what you are saying, so, sir, the current quarter, Q2 average of L'Oreal alcohol prices was somewhere at $1,850. Now, in October, we are at $3,000 and may remain at this level. It means that the sudden increase has happened from Q2 to Q3 will be from $1,800 to $3,000. That is a really sharp increase in RM prices.
Correct.
And if you are not able to go through to the customer again and again, and we are already seeing, sir, in Q2 there is already margin pressure. So should we prepare that Q3 can be further disastrous in terms of margin because we may not be able to?
So the point here is, what you need to be looking at is in terms of, if you see last quarter, the margin reduction was majorly on account of the production losses that we had because of the supply of the feedstocks, okay, which is what we explained. The 20 crores that Shekhar mentioned in his con call remarks was supply-led in terms of the inability to even produce and serve our customers. Okay, so our ability to pass on in terms of this is very much intact, but it only comes with a lag. So the same thing will happen when oil goes up from 1,800 to 3,000. The reverse also will happen when it comes from 3,000 to 2,000. We don't know as to which way the market is going to go. It's all in terms of how well our business is configured in terms of longer-term contracts, bid business and spot business. And that's how risk management framework gives us that strength to be able to tide over these sort of volatile market situations.
So you want to say that the loss in the current quarter or the margin pressure is more due to the unavailability of raw material and volume losses, not mainly because of inability to pass it on.
Yes.
Okay. So should we assume that this is a large part of the $3,000 pricing, which is right now in month of October, you have already taken the sufficient increase to match this $3,000 costing of the raw material?
Obviously.
Okay, so the price negotiation has already happened with the customer. The price increase has already happened. It means that it would have led to almost 100% or maybe 70-80% price revision to the end customer. Are they in position to absorb that much price increase, though?
Yeah, but that's the way it is, because the increase is not something that is manageable by us. It's so significant that obviously it has to get passed on. So what the consumers, whether my customer will take it or the consumer is willing to take it, what the consumer will do is only after my customers take this increase of price and put it on the market shelves. That's what I said when I answered one of the questions earlier. We need to wait and watch because finally the consumer decides. If the consumer is unwilling to take this, then certain alternatives have to be looked at. But as of now, we don't see that happening. So important thing is how the consumer votes in terms of these price increases.
And sir, in your experience in history, whether this kind of such sharp increase in such a short period of time, like in just within 6 months, RM increasing from almost $1,000 to $3,000, do you see that the customer downtrading is bound to happen, or do you see that the customer can take this price increase? I mean, if our shampoo prices and the baking soap prices goes up by almost 50-70%, then do you see that there is chances of downtrading, because we're not hearing that kind of commentary from the FMCG companies like HUL and maybe P&G, but you can give some guidance that in the history whether it can be absorbed in such a short period of time or it won't be and people will see the downtrading.
First is a word of caution. Whatever I say, history is not something. It is very dangerous to be depending on history, because what happened 10 years back is not something that can be happening again in a similar situation 2 months from now. What is important is that with what say our customers are saying is in terms of the sort of increase that happens. When you say down trading, it is probably in terms of someone who is able to make a product that is cheaper. Okay, now obviously there are also going to be issues in terms of consumers being clear as to which products they want to buy. Down trading can be if someone is buying a shampoo which is very high and say sulfate-free shampoo which is costing say 500 rupees a bottle. They may say I may buy a bottle that is sulfate-based shampoo which is say 300 rupees. That is what. But everything requires SLES, correct? Everything requires SLS. Okay. So it essentially means that you can't make a shampoo without SLES. So question of down trading.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. And that becomes more important in our business, because we are also doing business with the small regional players like WOW and maybe the main company and all, who have benefited a lot from the e-commerce trade, but they are catering to high-end industry. Their ranges are the price range is from 500 to 700 rupees per sachet or maybe per packet. In that case, do you see that the MNCs who have a larger basket like P&G, HUL, definitely they may probably gain the market share because they have larger basket, and your dependency or which is on a tier 3 customers or a regional players, or they may lose the market share. Is there any risk to their business in such a short period? So,
no, I think this question cannot be answered now. I think we'll have to wait and watch, because the way the customers like the multinational customers are going to respond to this situation and how they're going to take this on with the competition in e-commerce is something that's a different subject. But point here is all the customers will want to see how they retain the consumers that they have already onboarded. Okay, so that's going to be interesting stuff that will pan out in the market. Probably we'll know in the coming months as to how who is getting that at the expense of both of them have grown. So the consumer finally decides. So we'll have to probably wait for some time to understand this.
But as of now, all your customers have accepted the price increase which you have taken.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. I have 3 questions. I'll come back to you. So thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Somit from Capital Mind. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, sir. I just wanted to have an understanding on why there has been an increase in your trade receivables in the first half. Any specific reason?
A bit louder, sir.
So I just understanding on why there has been a sharp rise in trade receivables in the first half. Any specific reason?
Rise in receivables. In the first is, the prices have gone up, raw material prices, so that gets passed on from your receivables position because the sale prices goes up, correct? So that is one reason. Second is, we've been with the sort of raw material availability issues that we had, timely availability, we had to prioritize for our strategic customers who essentially they have a higher credit period as compared to others. So this essentially means that on both these accounts, the receivables go up.
Okay, that's a point.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Vijay Karve from Bryanston Investments. Please go ahead.
Thank you for giving this opportunity. My first question is, what percentage does the top 5 products contribute to our revenues, and what kind of market share do we have in SLS, SLES, and phenoxyethanol in various markets, say suppose like India, AMET, and the rest of the world?
Yeah, the top 5 products will constitute approximately 60 to 65% of our turnover. And what is the next question?
On the market shares, we don't disclose the market share information. For product-wise market share information, we don't disclose.
Yeah.
No problem. My last question pertains to the volume growth. In the past, we have grown somewhere close to 7 to 8%, and we are guiding for the same. The market is growing and our size is also small. So why do we expect a low volume growth?
See, if you see as far as the Indian market is concerned, it has grown in this year by approximately 4% or so. At a global level, the home and personal care industry grows at about anywhere from 1.5 to 2%. We have always grown ahead of the market, but the entire situation this year has been vitiated by the supply chain issues and constraints and problems. Okay, so in spite of that, we would like to maintain our volume guidance of 6 to 8% as far as this year is concerned.
So if you look at in H1 this year, okay, compared to H1 last year, our volumes in India have grown by almost 14%, which is much ahead of how the market has grown.
Got it. Thank you so much and best of luck.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Participants who wishes to ask a question, please press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Shanti Patel from Shanti Patel Investment Advisors. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. My question is, what is the capacity utilization in this quarter?
Yeah, in this capacity utilization in this quarter was 67%.
And the second question is, what you think approximately return on equity as on 31st March 22? Approximately. I don't say
22.
Approximately 22.
Sorry?
Around 22. Next year.
Return on equity.
No, what do you expect by 31st March 22?
Yeah, we will better it.
Yeah, for the first 6 months it was about 20%, and we expect to better it by the end of this year.
But approximately, can you give some?
So we cannot. I think that may be guesswork. We don't want to be giving you any thing based on the guesswork, because I think finally that is a derivative, but we need to be ensuring that we manage the challenges pretty well and enhance our performance. That will flow into return on equity going up, and that is our endeavor. We do hope that our intention and capabilities are supported equally by the external environment, and we're hoping for the best. But our intention and capabilities are very much in line to ensure that we are able to deliver better in terms of return on equity.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nikunj Agarwal from Whitewell Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity. So I just wanted to know, how do you see the China Plus One strategy panning out, since most of our revenue are from exports? So any sense there which you can give us?
So I think I have answered this earlier. See, China Plus One, essentially we look at China. In certain specialty ingredients that we are supplying into China, we do see that as something that can be an uptick for us. But then we need to, because the recent issues that are happening in China, we need to wait and watch. But most importantly, we also need to be ensuring that the situation in India in terms of the way the logistic situation is, that needs to get improved significantly. But whether someone who has been sourcing majorly from China wants to be sourcing those products from India, those are foreign as far as our industry is concerned.
Okay, and so talking more about the specialty side. So I mean, we are manufacturing it from India, US, and Egypt. So on a longer term basis, let's say down the line 3 to 5 years, how do you see the specialty chemical portfolio of our company growing as a whole, and what will be the key drivers according to you?
It will be growing. Our objective is, that's why we're investing in capacities, and obviously we want to ensure that we are going ahead of the market. The second is in terms of what will be the key drivers for that. The key drivers will be the consumer trends that are moving more towards sustainable products.
So the key drivers will be safety, wellness, sustainability, and health. So health and well-being always comes on top. So these will be the primary drivers which will drive the specialties, surfactants. Of course, one another very trend which will determine will be premiumization. So all these will be the drivers with respect to the specialty products that Galaxy is investing in terms of setting up the various capacities.
Yeah. And recently, we are trying to focus more of our portfolio into green products and towards sustainability, which is a very good move. So how do you see, how is the demand now, and what's the percentage of revenue from the green products as of now?
See, these are progressively growing, and we have continuously grown year on year on all these products. Today, as you know, the specialty portfolio constitutes almost 30 to 35, 35% of our total turnover, and this ratio will only increase.
See, one of the things on green is that right now, if you see the way everyone is looking at using it in certain specific high-end premium products. Okay, what the commitments that many of our customers have made is that how do they by 2030 and 2035 make their entire sourcing of products green. Now that is where we are working on, and we are positioned to be able to serve them. Okay, both in our capabilities and our ability to be able to churn out those products. So as of now, if you see green products or whatever are into specific SKUs which is high, and that is how they are testing consumers, and certain consumers are buying only green products. But how do we make it more democratic in terms of the way our consumers are committed to making their entire supply chain green? So that's what we are working on with them.
As you would have heard, almost all the major players of personal and home care products across the world have committed to replace their petchem feedstocks with natural feedstocks. Yeah. This is going to be a very, very important trend going forward, and we are very well placed to be able to service this particular opportunity.
Yeah, more into that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I'll get back in the queue. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Subh Joshi from an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, sir. Sir, actually, sir, what are the measures we are taking? We are taking in our product portfolio, we are taking any price hike or anything, or any kind of precautions.
Your line is not clear. We are not able to hear your question clearly.
And please be a little slow.
Now it's clear?
Yeah.
Sir, what I'm saying, we are taking any price hike in our overall product portfolio. So we have our clients. So because we are getting from the inflationary price hike. So I know that it is very short term hike, but we are taking any price hike. So that will be.
Yeah. So we are taking price hikes.
Okay. And sir, sir, you are planning any kind of capex or kind of any patents?
So that is already taking patents and planning capacities is the ongoing exercise. And yeah, there are certain capacities that are already getting commissioned, as we said, by Jan 22, and more capacity additions in line with what the market requires are already in the drawing board. So we'll announce that as and when we form up the plans.
So as of today, the total number of patents that we hold is about 80, and we have applied for another 15.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir, and congratulations for this issue.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rohit Nagraj from Emkay Global. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the follow-up. So the question is pertaining to Dr. Nirmal, who is now resigned. Yeah. So how are we taking the R&D initiative further, and any more substantial update on the R&D front?
Dr. Nirmal continues to lead our R&D. Okay, he has only retired from the board of directors. Okay, that is, in terms of what is called internal rules with respect to the age limit, but he continues to lead R&D in Galaxy.
Okay. Sorry, my understanding was wrong. No. Sir, the second question is in terms of the recent rise in L'Oreal alcohol prices. So I understand it is unprecedented and never seen before. Any structural changes which are driving these prices? Because we have also seen that from close to about 1,000 to 1,500 odd levels, those prices have moved up beyond 2,000 odd levels. So from the availability perspective, are there any structural changes which will keep the prices on a higher level? And given this particular event has occurred in the recent past, any particular areas where we have taken our risk mechanism from a working on a different perspective? Thank you.
Actually, there is in your vegetable oil prices. Okay, as with any commodity, more so with agricultural produce, is that the main determinant is the supply side, because demand will be steady in terms of its growth, but then the supply-led stuff is what is going to determine how the prices go up and go down. So if you see the supply side had severe challenges on the vegetable oil side. And these supply challenges led to lower production, lower inventories, and that has led to the price increase. So if you say structural, the stuff is in the last 1 year, the production has got impacted significantly for vegetable oils. Okay, so other than that, there is nothing structural change that has happened. Now, as production starts improving in terms of the plantations working to their full capacity, okay, the supply should improve, and that would start softening the prices. That's the way it is.
Right. And one just last clarification on EO side. So for our incremental capacities, do we need incremental EO, given that there is only a single producer and constraint with increasing the capacity? If we need incremental EO, how are we going to tackle this particular subject?
First of all, the supplier of EO is not only a single supplier. There are 4 locations, and for them, this is a very strategic molecule, and we have a huge strategic engagement with them. We don't see that as a challenge. So our growth plans are very much intertwined with their growth plans in this particular molecule, and we don't see this as an issue at all. What has happened was something that was more situation specific in terms of the maintenance schedule getting extended because of COVID. But last year, where they couldn't do much of the maintenance properly, and then they had to continue and complete that in this year. And this year again, when they started, they had COVID issues in the first quarter.
Right, got it. Thank you so much, and best of luck.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Bob from Falcon. Please go ahead.
Hi. Have you seen a similar situation historically, for example, in 2008?
Yes.
We did.
Yes, we have seen L'Oreal alcohol going up to $3,500.
And then crashing to $900.
Yeah, and crashing to $900.
Right. And how did you manage it? So it was, you would have been hit both sides.
No, so if you have to tell you the truth, at that time we didn't have the ability to manage it that well, because that was the first time that something so significant happened. Then we put in place a good risk management framework in place that has allowed us to manage subsequent situations like this, which again happened in 2012. Okay, and then it again happened in 2015-16. So this is something that keeps happening every 18 to 24 months. Okay, so the volatility has only increased year after year. So that has enabled and honed our ability to manage this risk in a significantly better way.
I see. Okay, that's comforting. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shanti Patel from Shanti Patel Investment Advisors. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I just...
Sorry, Mr. Patel, but we cannot hear you. Your voice is breaking.
Okay. Yeah, now? Is it okay?
Yes, this is
Hello?
better.
Is it okay? Yeah. I just wanted to know what will be the incremental turnover from January, from which date we are going to have new plants in operation, and what will be the approximate profit after that?
No, we cannot be. Our first thing is to commission the plant. Subsequently, since it's all new products, how do we ensure that we are able to, get those volumes placed with the customers. And we will not be able to make any statements in terms of what will be the turnover or what will be the sort of profitability out of that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rohan Gupta from Edelweiss. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, sir. So thank you for the follow-up. Sir, a couple of questions. Just one is on, sir, our employee costs. There has been a quarter-on-quarter decline in the employee cost. Any particular changes in that, or it just was a higher in Q1?
Can you repeat the question, Rohit?
Rohan, sir, I was saying that employee cost on quarter-on-quarter has come down. Any particular changes there?
The employee cost,
quarter-on-quarter.
yeah. See, the question comes is that in the employee cost last year and current year, last year since we had a lockdown in
Sir, I was comparing more from the Q1 to Q2. Q1 it was 54 crore and current quarter is 46 crore.
you are talking about the second quarter.
You are sequential.
Sequential has gone down because the performance for the second quarter was not up to the mark. That is why the reversal has been done.
Sir, performance was not up to mark, means that, but we have to keep for employees, right? It's not linked with the sales, correct?
So no. So it is because Q1 to Q2, so the Q2 performance where our variable pay provisions obviously have been scaled down. Okay?
Okay. So there is a very variable part of the employees which has come back.
There is. For your senior management, top management, there is a good amount of variable pay component.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, sir. So that you guys have to take a lot of cuts in the salary for the current quarter.
Yeah, correct. Thanks for noticing that. So we also take it.
Sir, I wish that it goes up significantly in the next quarter in line with the improvement in the performance of the company.
Hopefully it goes up in the next quarter.
Second question on the commissioning of this specialty chemical plant which is happening by end of this year. So we have seen that we have been living in a COVID environment and there has been a lot of global travel restrictions. And specialty chemical plant is focusing more on the new product development and all. So even though we are going to commission the plant, but how has been the product acceptability, how has been the demonstration and offering of sampling to the customers, or we will see that very slow pickup in our specialty chemical plant because that may only be possible after the restrictions by global travel.
Yeah, every person, including you and me, are fed up of this COVID. Okay, so we want it out of a dictionary. And if you see travel plans are easing, customer organizations, including at Galaxy, we have started many people coming back to work from office. Okay, so everything is improving for the best. Okay, so keeping our fingers crossed, and COVID is expected to get into an endemic zone as per WHO in the coming months. If that happens, then I think everything is falling well in place. Our capacity is coming up. Okay, the consumer demand looking up in terms of people mobility increasing, so that's good. So we don't see any further negative happening unless COVID has its own way of rearing its head back again, which looks to be a low probability.
Any sense can you give on the commissioning of the new specialty chemical plants? How much of this is the only focusing on new product development and how much we can be producing our existing product basket of the specialty chemical?
That will be, see, it's all a multi-purpose plant that we put up. So it can be a new product also we can make plus existing also. So it will be difficult for me to give you that number because it's not that everything is, they are mutually, not mutually exclusive. So I can make 2 or 3 products which can be, some of it can be existing or some of it can be new products. So that's the way we configure our plant, configure our plant. Okay. So it can't be difficult.
So my concern was that even the pandemic is ending, I agree with that and the global travel may start, but it may still take at least 1.5 years for reaching to the customers, doing the demonstration and sampling. So do you see that for next 1.5 years for new specialty chemical plant?
No, let me be clear. So all these new products now, which is commissioning, our engagement with customers continued to the virtual mode. We actually did more meetings with customers last year than we ever did in the previous years. Okay, because we could do more of virtual meetings. So that market development efforts never got impacted. In fact, they got enhanced in the last year. So when things come back, it's only that it's going to accelerate it further. It's not that we have to stop our market development activities for our new products.
Okay. So you were saying that it was actually business as usual. You have been able to meet new customers, explore new geographies, and after the commissioning of this new plant.
Looking at it, that it was not in terms of our market development efforts with the customers that actually got enhanced last year. Our customers, if they're launching any new, with our molecule, they're going to launch any new SKUs or new products, they would have waited for things to stabilize as far as COVID is concerned and consumers come back to the markets and they start looking at it positively. So those things will only accelerate with the COVID situation, regressing. Okay?
Okay. Just last from my side. Since you are also in LABSA in Egypt, sir, how much price increase has happened in LABSA product basket compared to our L'Oréal alcohol product basket? Just in comparison.
L'Oréal alcohol has scaled up much faster than LAB. So they keep, I think, trying to compete with each other.
Okay, because the Egypt markets are very sensitive, and if L'Oréal alcohol-based prices have gone up much sharply, then there may be possibility that there may be shift in that market may be visible from clean or green chemistry product to L'Oréal alcohol. To LABSA product.
Yeah, but the thing is that not every product can incorporate LABSA. Okay, so there are certain formulations that cannot have LABSA. It's not that they are interchangeable.
LABSA is largely used only in home care, fabric care largely, and some amount of dish care. It cannot replace kg for kg SLES in every single formulation. No.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Management for closing comments.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending this conference call. Have a great day and have a safe and a great year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you. On behalf of Galaxy Surfactants Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.